There's a lie we're told about love, that when it's real, it simply works. That if it's meant to be, it will be easy. That soulmates find each other and that's it. The rest is just happy eternity wrapped in promises that never break. But the truth, the one nobody likes to admit because it hurts too much, is that love also crumbles. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. Sometimes at the exact moment we need it whole the most. And what happens when you finally gather the courage to leave? And life forces you to stay? When the divorce papers are signed, tucked away in a drawer, ready to end what already seemed dead, and suddenly an illness changes everything, do you stay for love? Or for guilt? By choice? Or because you have no way out? This is the story of a marriage that looked solid from the outside, but inside had been crumbling for years. She, heiress to an empire that devours everything around it, trained to be perfect but forgotten how to be human. He, the brilliant lawyer who entered that world for love, but was never truly accepted, only tolerated, used, kept in the place of someone who serves but doesn't belong. They loved each other, yes. But love alone isn't enough when the world insists on turning it into obligation, into protocol, into just another piece on the corporate board. And then came the moment of rupture. He decided to leave, chose his own sanity, freedom, the right to breathe away from a surname that would never be his. But destiny has perverse timing. Because it was precisely when he was ready to sign the end that he discovered her illness. Now he must choose again. Stay not for love, but for pity. Care for her because life demands it, or because his heart still beats differently when she's near. And while he struggles with this impossible decision, the empire begins to move. Slow, predatory, relentless. Power doesn't wait for fragility to recover. Power attacks. And in the middle of this corporate war, between alliances forming in shadows and betrayals wrapped in kind words, two wounded hearts must decide if there's still something worth saving, or if what remains is just the ghost of a love that was real, but didn't withstand the weight of the world. This is a story about reconstruction, about the difference between loving and remaining, about what happens when the glass castle finally cracks. And you discover there's still something inside it worth protecting, even if it's just the memory of what once was truth. There are cracks no one sees until it's too late. Those that form slowly, silently, in the foundations of what seemed unshakable. A marriage can be like this, a glass castle that continues shining under the lights of corporate ballrooms, while inside the walls have already begun to crumble. And perhaps the cruelest part is realizing that, even when everything is about to collapse, there's still something there. Something that never truly died, just fell asleep under the weight of expectations, protocols, differences that the world insists on turning into walls. Love doesn't disappear from one moment to the next. It dilutes, hides, camouflages itself between meetings and formal dinners, until someone decides to search for it again. But what happens when the decision to give up arrives at the exact moment life demands you stay? When divorce papers are ready, and suddenly, an unexpected illness transforms everything. Every unspoken word, every postponed gesture, every silence that seemed comfortable and was actually just emptiness. It's as if destiny had perverse timing, a way of forcing two people to look at each other when nothing remains but naked truth. No masks, no escapes. Only the question suspended in the air, almost unbearable. Is there still something worth saving? Or is what's left just the ghost of what once was real? And then, the empire emerges. Not just as scenery, but as an invisible antagonist, a gigantic conglomerate that devours everything around it, including those who carry its name. She was born to lead this world. He entered it for love, but never truly belonged. And now, with her illness putting everything at stake, corporate power begins to move like a predator sensing weakness. Alliances shift. Loyalties are tested. And in the middle of this silent war, two wounded hearts must decide if they're still capable of fighting, not just against the world outside, but against the abyss that grew between them. Because sometimes love's greatest enemy isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of everything that prevents us from feeling it. She was born with a silver spoon, but silver also weighs heavy. Heiress to a conglomerate that moves entire economies, she grew up between marble halls and silent corridors, where each step echoed as a reminder that nothing there was truly hers. It was legacy, responsibility, armor she needed to wear since childhood. They taught her to smile at the right moments, to speak only what was necessary, to transform emotion into strategy. She learned to be impeccable, but impeccable also means untouchable. And over time, this distance that protected her from the world began to protect her also from the people she loved. She became the woman everyone admired from afar, but whom no one could truly embrace. Not even him. He was different from the start. Brilliant lawyer, with a sharp mind that made him indispensable in the corporate world, but with a surname that would never be listed among the great ones. He came from another place, not exactly poor, but definitely outside the upper floor. And perhaps that's precisely what attracted her at first. His lightness, the way he could laugh at small things, as if life didn't need to be so solemn all the time. He looked at her as if she were just a woman, not a symbol, and she, tired of being a sculpture, allowed herself to be seen. The relationship began almost clandestine, hidden among the protocols of a world that doesn't forgive transgressions. He was the sweet secret she kept, proof that there was still something human beneath all that rehearsed perfection. But secrets don't survive daylight forever. When the marriage happened, it was celebrated as strategic alliance. He, the talented lawyer who added legal value to the empire. She, the heiress who needed someone trustworthy by her side. What began as delicate rebellion was domesticated by routine, by expectations, by the invisible weight of belonging to a surname that wasn't his. Gradually, the man who made her laugh transformed into just another executive serving her legacy. And she, trying to balance love and empire, ended up choosing the second without realizing she was losing the first. Meals became silent meetings. Birthdays, dates forgotten between corporate trips. And affection, that spontaneous affection that united them, was replaced by polite formality, almost bureaucratic. They still slept in the same bed, but no longer inhabited the same world. Until he decided to leave. Not out of anger, but exhaustion, the kind of tiredness that comes from loving someone who's no longer present, from serving an empire that never saw him as equal. The divorce papers were ready, secretly signed, kept in a drawer like a goodbye. He still didn't have the courage to deliver. And it was exactly at this moment, in this fragile space between the end and the new beginning, that he found her medical exams. Not by accident, not by invasion, just by destiny, or by the cruel timing life sometimes chooses to pull us from autopilot. And everything changed. Because suddenly, the glass castle he was about to abandon revealed something he didn't expect to find. The memory that, somewhere beneath all those cracks, there was still the woman he loved. And perhaps she still needed him. Perhaps he still needed her. There was a time when they were just two. Before the ballrooms, before the contracts, before her surname became an invisible prison. He remembers the first meeting. She entered the meeting room with that impeccable posture, but it was the way she touched her hair when she thought no one was looking that completely disarmed him. It was a small gesture, vulnerable, human, and he realized in that instant that behind all that corporate armor existed someone who also got tired, who also doubted, who also wanted to be seen without needing to impress. The first months were made of stolen encounters, quick coffees between appointments, messages exchanged late at night, muffled laughter in empty corridors. They built a world just for them, secret and light, where it didn't matter where each came from. What mattered was only what they felt when together. But secrets are fragile, and the real world has a cruel way of invading even the best hidden hideouts. When the relationship stopped being clandestine and became marriage, something changed. Not all at once, not with a bang. It was a slow, imperceptible collapse, like sand slipping through fingers. Meals that used to be pretexts for long conversations became silent events, where each chewed at their own pace while checking emails on phones. Lazy Sundays, those when they'd stay in bed until late just talking about nothing, were replaced by packed schedules and unavoidable commitments. She dove headfirst into the family legacy, assuming responsibilities that seemed to swallow her whole. And he, trying to fit into that universe, realized he was losing himself in the process. He was no longer the man she chose. He was the empire's lawyer, the convenient husband. The man from the lower floor who was allowed to go up, but would never be treated as equal. The social difference was always there, from the beginning. But at first it was fuel. The contrast of worlds made everything more intense, more forbidden, more alive. Now it was just a wall. He felt it in her family's looks, in the subtle comments during formal dinners, in the way his name was never mentioned with the same weight as the others. It didn't matter how many cases he won, how many brilliant strategies he presented. For them, he remained the outsider. And worst, he began to feel that for her too. Not because she said anything, but precisely because she said nothing. She didn't defend him, didn't include him in important decisions, treated him with distant cordiality, almost professional, as if he were just another employee of the conglomerate. And perhaps that's exactly what he had become, an employee of his own marriage. Birthdays began to be ignored. First his, forgotten amid a business trip she couldn't postpone, then hers, which he tried to celebrate but was received with a tired smile and a "thank you, but I'm exhausted." The small traditions they created together, Saturday breakfast, evening walks, movies they watched embracing on the couch, disappeared one by one, replaced by efficient and empty routines. He swallowed frustrations because he didn't know how to name them, how to explain he was feeling invisible to the only person who should see him, how to say love was transforming into obligation without seeming selfish, especially when she carried the weight of an entire empire on her shoulders. So he kept quiet, and so did she, and the silence, which at first seemed comfortable, revealed itself for what it truly was: absence disguised as peace. Until one night, alone in the office, he caught himself looking at his wedding ring and feeling nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a deep, heavy, suffocating emptiness. And it was in that moment he understood. Love hadn't died all at once. It had hibernated, fallen asleep under layers of disappointment, distance, and exhaustion. And now he needed to decide if it was still worth trying to wake it, or if it was more honest to let it rest in peace. The divorce papers were drafted that same week. He didn't tell anyone. Kept them in the drawer like someone keeping a goodbye they still don't have the courage to say out loud. But destiny, as always, had other plans. It was by chance. Or perhaps there's no chance when destiny decides two people haven't finished their story yet. He was in her office looking for a document, something trivial, bureaucratic, that could wait, when he saw the medical folder half covered by corporate reports. It wasn't his business, shouldn't open it. But something in the way it was hidden, as if she herself was afraid to look, made him hesitate. And then he opened it, and read, and the floor disappeared beneath his feet. Technical words he needed to read 3 times to understand. Diagnoses that transformed fear into certainty. Prognoses that stole the air from his lungs. She was sick, really sick, and by the look of the exams, had known for some time but hadn't told anyone. Not him. Especially not him. Anger came first. Hot, irrational, desperate. How could she hide something like this? How could she carry this alone while he was planning to abandon her? But the anger lasted only seconds before being swallowed by something bigger, more visceral. Fear. The kind of fear that paralyzes and awakens at the same time, that makes you realize how much still matters precisely when you thought it didn't anymore. He held the exams with trembling hands, felt the thin paper between his fingers, as if it were physical proof of everything he was about to lose. And then he understood. The illness was the earthquake, that brutal tremor that brings down everything superficial, small grudges, foolish pride, invented distances, and reveals what truly sustains. And what sustained, he realized with painful clarity, was still her. Still the love he tried to convince himself had died. He said nothing that day, nor the next. Kept the divorce papers at the bottom of the drawer, covered them with old documents like someone burying an intention that no longer made sense. And began to observe her differently. Noticed the dark circles she disguised with makeup, the way she hesitated before climbing stairs. How sometimes she held her side when she thought no one was looking. He had lived beside her for years, shared the same bed, the same house, the same life, and hadn't noticed. Or worse, had noticed and chose not to see, too busy with his own wounds to see hers. Guilt came like a wave, but he didn't allow himself to drown in it. Not now. Now, he needed to act. The gestures returned slowly, almost timid, as if he were relearning to touch something precious after treating it as common for so long. He began to prepare tea in the morning, the kind she liked, with honey and lemon, served in the porcelain cup she inherited from her grandmother. Left it on the nightstand before she woke, without fanfare, without expecting recognition. When she came down for breakfast, he had already separated her medicines, checked the schedule, canceled meetings she insisted on keeping even when exhausted. At first, she found it strange. Looked at him with that confused, almost suspicious expression, like someone who doesn't understand the change but is afraid to ask. And he didn't explain, just continued. Because some things don't need to be said to be understood. Sometimes love communicates better in the silence of actions than in the noise of words. And then, one night, the gesture that changed everything happened. She was sitting on the couch, tired after another impossible day, and he knelt in front of her to adjust the slippers sliding off her swollen feet. It wasn't grand, wasn't epic. It was just a man caring for the woman he loved in the simplest way possible. But when his fingers touched her ankle, something broke. She held her breath. He felt her skin shiver under his fingers. And for an instant, brief, fragile, powerful, they were no longer the distant couple, the crumbling marriage, the empire and its demands. They were just two people rediscovering what it means to be seen, to be touched, to be remembered. The forgotten tenderness began to return, not as explosion, but as slow thaw. And in the middle of chaos, in the middle of illness and fear, something impossible began to happen. They began to find each other again. The empire never sleeps. While they tried to rebuild something within the house walls, outside the conglomerate moved like a living organism, predatory, tireless. It wasn't just a company. It was an ecosystem of power, where each family member played chess with human pieces, where alliances formed and dissolved, according to interests that changed each quarter. And now, with her health fragile, the pieces began to move faster. She had always been the natural heir, the chosen one to carry the legacy forward. But power is like water. It occupies empty space. And illness, in the cruel language of the corporate world, is emptiness, is weakness, is opportunity. Meetings began to change in tone. He noticed in the exchanged glances when she coughed during presentations, in how certain board members suggested she rest more, delegate responsibilities. Think about what's best for the company. They were kind words wrapped in poison. He knew that game, had studied corporate law long enough to recognize a coup being arranged in slow motion. Uncles who had always been cordial suddenly began questioning her decisions. Distant cousins appeared with innovative proposals for restructuring. And her mother, the matriarch who always treated the empire as extension of her own body, began asking questions about succession with a frequency that wasn't coincidence. They were testing the ground, measuring forces, waiting for the right moment to attack. And he was in the crossfire. As legal director, it was his responsibility to protect the conglomerate's interests, shield contracts, anticipate risks, ensure nothing threatened the power structure. But as husband, his loyalty was different. It was with her. With the woman who could barely stand after treatment sessions, but still insisted on appearing at meetings because she knew absence would be read as surrender. He saw how much it cost her to maintain the mask of strength, how much it hurt to pretend everything was under control while her body begged for rest. And he also realized his two roles, professional and personal, were on a collision course. Because protecting the company meant, increasingly, making decisions that hurt her. And protecting her meant betraying the trust of an empire that never truly accepted him, but now depended on him to survive the turbulence. The dilemmas started small and grew like cracks in an old wall. A contract that needed to be signed urgently, but in practice transferred decision-making power from her to the board. A document that protected family assets, but also limited her autonomy over her own shares. He read, reread, tried to find loopholes, but the truth was simple and brutal. The corporate world has no room for fragility, and he needed to choose. Sign and protect the empire at her expense, or refuse and watch everything crumble, including the inheritance she spent her entire life preparing to carry. He spent nights awake, paperwork spread across the office desk, feeling the weight of decisions that shouldn't be his. Because deep down, all of this was proof he was still seen as employee. If he were really family, he wouldn't need to choose between her and the legacy. He'd protect both. But he wasn't. Never was. And now he was paying the price for pretending this difference didn't matter. But then something changed. In the midst of power games, subtle betrayals, alliances forming in shadows, he realized he had an advantage the others didn't. He knew her. Not the heiress, not the impeccable executive, but the woman. Knew when she was bluffing. Knew when she needed support, even if pride wouldn't let her ask. And he began to use this, not against her, but in her favor. Blocked contracts under technical pretexts. Dragged processes that seemed urgent. Created time. Because if the empire was a board, he could play too. Not to conquer power, but to protect the only piece that truly mattered. And in the middle of that corporate war, while the world tried to devour them, something unexpected happened. They began to fight together. Not as boss and employee, not as heiress and outsider, but as two survivors in the same boat, rowing against the current that had tried to separate them from the beginning. There was a night when everything became clear. One of those nights where silence weighs so much it seems to have texture, where each breath sounds too loud and thoughts leave no room for rest. She was lying in bed, looking at the ceiling with that distant expression he already knew well. The expression of someone calculating how much time they still have, how much they can still endure before crumbling. And he, sitting in the armchair beside, pretended to read documents but actually just observed. Observed the rise and fall of her chest, the way her fingers trembled slightly, how she bit her lip when pain came but didn't want to admit it. And then the question he'd been avoiding for weeks finally reached him, relentless. Why was he there? Was it love holding him? Or just guilt disguised as devotion? Because there was a difference. He knew this. Staying out of pity isn't the same as staying by choice. Caring for someone because life demands it isn't the same as caring because the heart asks. and he needed to be honest with himself, brutally, painfully honest, before he could be honest with her. So he closed his eyes and allowed truth to come, unfiltered, without the pretty excuses we invent to soften what hurts. He asked himself, if she were well, healthy, strong as before, would he still be there? Or would he have delivered the divorce papers and moved forward as planned? The answer took time, came in pieces, fragmented, confused. But it came, and it was simultaneously devastating and liberating. He was there because he loved. Not the idealized love from the beginning, not that naive passion that ignores flaws, but mature love, tired, wounded, the one that knows all the cracks and still chooses to stay. The love that doesn't need perfection, just presence. And it was in this moment, in this silent crossroads between fear and courage, that he got up from the armchair and made the gesture that would define everything. He knelt beside the bed, took her feet, barefoot, cold, delicate, and began to massage them carefully, like someone holding something precious they almost lost. She opened her eyes, surprised, tried to pull her feet away, embarrassed, but he held firm, not with force, with tenderness. And then, while his fingers worked the tense muscles, untying knots of exhaustion and pain, something also untied inside him. Because this wasn't new. He used to do this at the beginning, when they were still just two young people in love. Before the empire, before the protocols, before the weight of her surname transformed love into obligation. It was their gesture, the forgotten tradition, the symbol that, somewhere beneath all the layers of hurt and distance, there were still the same people who chose each other one day. She began to cry, not with dramatic sobs, but with those silent tears that flow because the body can't hold anymore, and he continued. Massaging, caring, saying without words everything the voice couldn't carry. I'm here, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because I choose to be. Because you're still the person I want by my side, even when everything is crumbling. Because love doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be real. And it was real. For the first time in years, it was painfully, dangerously, magnificently real. There was no magic there, no epic restart with background music and grand declarations. There were just two broken adults trying to glue each other's pieces, understanding the result would never be the same as the original, but it would be theirs, and maybe that was enough. She touched his face, and he held that hand as if it were the first time, as if it were the last, as if each second mattered because now they knew, in a way only those who almost lost can know, that time isn't guaranteed, that love doesn't sustain itself, that sometimes it needs to be chosen, rebuilt, decided again each day. And there, in that bedroom where so much silence had built walls, they made the choice, without impossible promises, without pretending it would be easy, just with the raw courage of those who decide that living is more important than being right, that loving is more valuable than protecting pride. And the glass castle, the one that was about to completely crumble, began to be rebuilt, not in glass this time, but in something stronger, something that carries scars, but doesn't break so easily, something that looks a lot like hope. Reconciliation didn't come with fireworks. There was no dramatic music, no declarations that seemed like movie scripts. What there was something simpler, truer, and for that very reason, infinitely more powerful. They woke up the next day and chose to stay. And the next day, they chose again. And so, one day at a time, they rebuilt what seemed irretrievable. It wasn't the perfect marriage people romanticize. There were still uncomfortable silences, arguments about small things that hid old grudges, moments when distance threatened to return because it's